Call the monthly board meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Quite a crowd to see you leave, Leroy.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Second. All in favor, show of hands. I have a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion.
Dr. Fulmer makes the second. All in favor, show of hands. And the motion carries. School board recognition, Mrs. Bells.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening. It's one of those bittersweet evenings. Every year in April, we do our board recognitions, and then we will reorganize the Board of Education after conducting old business this evening. I'd first like to start by recognizing our current officers. Our officers are willing to take on additional responsibilities and guidance for our Board of Education. They take on these additional responsibilities because they deeply care about our district and the students that we serve. They are committed to providing the leadership necessary to continue the growth of the district and provide a variety of educational services to meet all student needs. The first person I'd like to recognize is Mr. Paul Schultz. Mr. Schultz has served 5 terms as president for the Waynesville Board of Education. Mr. Schultz has remained a steadfast leader for the district. His guidance, support, and encouragement have been invaluable to me as a first-year superintendent. Paul is a native and proud Tiger and is extremely supportive to our district educators. On behalf of the district, it is my honor to show you and provide you a small token of appreciation, Mr. Paul Schultz. Congratulations on your birthday. Right here. Okay. Next, I'd like to recognize Dr. Leroy Fulmer, Vice President. Dr. Fulmer has served 5 terms as Vice President. He has been highly active in the Missouri School Board Association. His knowledge and wisdom for decades of experience have been a tremendous asset to the Board of Education. His commitment to high expectations for our district is unmatched. Dr. Fulmer. Next, I'd like to recognize Mr. Charles Quinn, Treasurer. Mr. Quinn has served as Treasurer of the School Board for 4 years. He has a passion and is a steadfast supporter of our district diversity initiatives. He serves in numerous leadership roles throughout our community and sincerely cares about the social and emotional needs of our staff and students. Mr. Charles Quinn. I'm sorry. Next, Mrs. Janelle Rao, Secretary. Mrs. Rao has served as Secretary for 1 year. Mrs. Rao serves in many leadership roles throughout our community. In fact, there's not a community event that she's not likely at. Janelle is detail-oriented and a big-picture thinker. Her thoughtful perspective has been a tremendous asset to our Board of Education. Mrs. Janelle Rao. Yes. Thank you to our board officers. I would now like to call all outgoing Board of Education members forward, Mr. Rick Harn, Dr. Leroy Fulmer, and Mr. Dan Deering. It is my honor tonight to present you with a token of appreciation for completing your term on behalf of the Waynesville School District. You have all been an absolute pleasure to work with. We thank you for your commitment and service to the district and for volunteering to meet the needs of our children in the community. Come forward. Now I give you presents. You're gonna have to get up a couple times. You're gonna be all right. It's your last one. In closing, our students benefit from having a stable board with diverse perspectives on complex issues that we face. I want you to know that your time is valued and the work that you do is deeply appreciated. So with the closing of one board, we look forward to swearing in a new board in just a couple of minutes. We appreciate the contributions of this excellent team and look forward on the great things to come.
So I had requested Mr. Representative Hardwick to be here tonight. He unfortunately cannot, but I asked for a couple of favors, and he did it, thanks to Megan. So, Dr. Fulmer, Mr. Deering, could you please come forward? I would read these, but it's a lot, if you've ever seen it, a lot of whereas, thereas, hereas, but it's thanking both these men for all their years of service, not as board members, but as educators as well. And I want to thank you both for helping me along. Dr. Fulmer, right there at the beginning, has always been right there with me, and I appreciate you guys both very much. So from Mr. Bill Hardwick, Representative. There you go, down there. Simmer down, they're not done yet. Now we'll move to action items. Professional Development Handbook, Dr. Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Administration requests approval of the 2023-2024 Professional Development Handbook as presented.
Any comments or questions? And do I have a motion? Dr. Fulmer makes a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Rouse, second. All in favor, show of hands. Motion carries. Textbook proposals, Dr. Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Textbook proposals for high school AP Chemistry and middle school health are attached for review and approval. Administration requests approval of the textbook proposals as presented.
Any comments or questions? Do I have a motion?
Make that motion, Mr. President.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, show of hands. Motion carries. 23-24 staffing plan, second reading, Dr. Goforth.
Thank you, Mr. President. The following attached staffing plan is presented for your review as a second reading. Administration requests approval of the above staffing plan for the 23-24 school year as presented.
Any comments or questions? Do I have a motion?
I would make that motion, Mr. President.
Do I have a second? All in favor, show of hands. Motion carries. 2324 certified and classified personnel handbooks. Dr. Goforth.
Thank you, Mr. President. The following attached certified and classified employee handbooks are presented for your review as a second reading. The administration requests approval of the following attached certified and classified employee handbooks as presented.
Comments or questions? Do I have a motion?
I make that motion.
Quinn makes a motion. Do I have a second? All in favor, show of hands. Motion carries. 2324 street assignments, Mrs. Bells.
Thank you, Mr. President. Administration is asking for a motion to approve boundary line change of Leaf Lane from East Elementary School Zone and add it to Freedom Elementary School Zone for the 2023-2024 school year. All other streets will remain the same.
Comments or questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor, show of hands. MSBA policy and procedure update, Mrs. Bells.
Thank you, Mr. President. Attached for the board's review and consideration are the following policy and procedure updates, which have been run through the TABS committee review and revision process, as well as a first reading through the board. Please note additional revisions were made to board policy BDDH, public participation at board meetings, since the first reading. Administration is recommending board action and adoption this evening.
Any comments or questions? Do I have a motion? Dr. Ford makes a motion. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Quinn second. All in favor, show of hands. Motion carries. And finally, election results, Mrs. Bells.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have for you the official results of the school board election. I want to thank those of you that came out and voted. Administration makes a motion to accept the election results as certified by the county clerk of Pulaski County.
Any comments or questions? Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Y'all know these two really don't like each other, but they're like best friends, but they pretend not to like each other. All in favor, show of hands. Motion carries. And with that, thank you, Leroy. Thank you, Dan, for your service. We appreciate you. Excited about the new board coming in. And with that, I will adjourn sine die.
All right, at this time, we will have Mrs. Ace, who is Secretary of the Board of Education, swear in our three recently elected candidates, Mr. Lane Lurcher, Mr. Andy Anderson, and Mr. Rick Harn.
Get in here, preacher.
Repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of Missouri,
and the state of Missouri,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
and impartially
impartially
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of school board member
of school board member
in and for
Waynesville School District,
Waynesville School District,
County of Pulaski,
State of Missouri,
State of Missouri,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
according to law.
according to law.
As per Board Policy BCA, I will serve as temporary chairperson to call the meeting to order and to facilitate the election of officers. It is recommended the board approve the candidates for board officers. If approved, these offices will be assumed immediately. Just to review, I will accept nominations for president. Seconds are not required by Robert's rules. A member can rise to accept or decline the nomination. After each nomination, I will say the candidate's name and ask if there are any further nominations. A motion is not required to close nominations unless it is apparent that individuals are being nominated as an honor only and have no intention to serve. After a reasonable time for nominating, all nominations will close. Next, I will ask for all those in favor of candidate 1, those in favor of candidate 2. If there is only one candidate, move to approve the president by acclamation. At this point, the new president will assume the responsibilities of taking nominations for other board offices such as vice president, secretary, treasurer, and MSBA delegate. At this time, I open the floor and take any nominations for president.
I'd like to nominate Paul Schultz as president of the Board of Education.
Okay, we have a nomination for Mr. Paul Schultz for president. Do you accept Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Schultz has accepted.
Okay, do I have a nomination for vice president?
I nominate Aaron Pondrum, Vice President.
I nominate Rick Horn, vice president.
Anybody else want to be vice president? Okay, all in favor of Mr. Pondrum? Raise your hand. Yeah, I got to do. Mr. Pondrum, do you accept nomination?
I respectfully decline.
Mr. Harn, do you accept the nomination?
I accept.
Anybody? Okay, congratulations, Mr. Harn. That's the first time ever. Nominations for secretary.
I'd like to nominate Ms. Janelle Rao.
Do you accept?
I do.
All right, no need to vote on that one. I have a motion to accept treasurer. Do I have a motion for treasurer?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Andy Anderson.
Do you accept? There you go. There's your officers. Now I need to nominate and elect an MSBA delegate to take over for Dr. Fulmer.
I would nominate Ms. Janelle Rao.
Do you accept?
I do.
All right, now we've got everybody. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda?
I make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, show of hands. Citizens' participation in statements.
Thank you, Mr. President. The district has not received any requests for citizens' participation per board policy BDDH.
Military update.
All right, good evening, Superintendent, for the board. I'll tell you, it's great to sit here and watch this, and what a great community this is. So thanks for giving me a few minutes on today's agenda to give you a bit of an update. General Bonner asked me to pass along a few things to the board and to the community. We appreciate your patience with the gates. So we've worked through some technical issues, and you should see as of today, the gate's going back to what we're used to on a daily basis. If not, you can come talk to me, or I'll point to someone else you can talk to about that. We're also very grateful for you hosting the third Community Salute to Service, and we're going to have a bunch of distinguished visitors coming in for that, and we're just very excited to see all those who've chosen to serve our nation be recognized for that. And then there's also the meal afterwards, and we've talked to your team about making sure that that's full and very well supported. He wanted me to relay how well and highly regarded our community is across the Army leaders and what a huge role this district plays. A major part of a community's reputation and success is educational opportunity. And we know this school brings military folks here and keeps them here because of how well you do in everything. So thanks so much for that. We also congratulate you on your success with the MSEP 6, and we have enjoyed seeing students excel in competitions such as music, gaming, Skills USA, JRTC, and athletics. We're very happy with the recent renovations to Nutter Fieldhouse and look forward to hosting your prom on the 29th of this month. In addition, we are looking forward to hosting your Avid Middle School students on post for a tour next week. And there are two other events I want to mention and invite everyone to. The first one is this Friday at Waynesville Park. So usually the Engineer Best Sapper competition is typically closed and on post, but this year we're bringing an event out to the community so everyone come out and see those soldiers competing, and we have multiple teams. And the weather is going to be good Army weather on Friday, so you'll be able to enjoy that with them. Also, we hope to see you at 0900 on Gammon Field on 19 May to farewell the Bonners and welcome Major General Chris and Sally Beck to the team. And I'll close by saying thank you for all you do to govern the district and care for our families. You're great teammates, and we're proud to serve with you. And I'll pass on to my battle buddy here for some more events.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. And I want to piggyback a little bit on that on behalf of the Fort Leonard Wood community. April is Month of the Military Child, so I want to pass along a thank you to the Waynesville School District, our teachers, our coaches, our administrative staff, all the support staff, the bus drivers, and so many that make a difference and impact the lives of our military children. So thank you for all that you do. In honor of Month of the Military Child, we are going to have on the 22nd of April a free event for all the youth at Gerlach Field on Fort Leonard Wood from 9 in the morning till noon, and that is the Momsey Palooza. And in a quote from our garrison commander, who doesn't love a palooza? Also, we have on the 22nd at 08 at the Army Community Service on Fort Leonard Wood, we are going to have an Earth Day cleanup to help clean up the installation and beautify our community. And this is a great way for our students that are looking to plus up those college resumes, get a little volunteer hours in, and just help out the community. So those are two great events coming up. You can find all that information on the MWR website or Facebook page. And once again, thank you for all that you do for our military children in Month of the Military Child. And congratulations to the board. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you, Colonel, for being here as well. District announcements, Mrs. Bills.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I proceed with my regular announcements, I'd like to welcome Colonel Hilberg, Chief of Staff, and then also Megan O'Donohue from Fort Leonard Wood. We value our partnership, and we are so blessed to have you as part of our team, so thank you for being here tonight. In addition, I also want to welcome Freedom Elementary staff who are out here in numbers this evening. We look forward to hearing more about your accomplishments during the Spotlight on Education. Tomorrow, we will host Special Olympics track and field at Waynesville High School, which is scheduled to begin at 9:00 a.m. in Tiger Stadium. I appreciate all the support we receive from our students, staff, and community who make this outstanding event possible every year. In addition, we have Spring Tiger Festival of Nations that will be held from 4:30 to 5:30 Friday, April 21st. At Waynesville High School, right outside the 9th grade lecture hall. Guests may enjoy a free trip around the world, sample foods, and get passports stamped. T-shirts will be available for sale this year. Echoing what Colonel Hilberg mentioned earlier, Community Salute to Service will be held at 6 p.m. Wednesday, May 10th at the Waynesville High School gym. We will recognize South Central Missouri High School seniors who will be serving in our military, and we ask the community come out and help us pack the gym for that event. Graduation will be held Friday, May 19th at Tiger Stadium. The last day of school for students in kindergarten through 11th grade will be Friday, May 6th, and it's really hard to believe that we're at this point where we're now announcing that. May 26th, sorry, thank you. I know, I let school out early, didn't I? Now I may have to take it back and rewind. May 26th. I think I did that with winter break or spring break too. I try to extend these things, it's subconscious. I mentioned earlier that April is month of the military child, and I'd like to thank the USO and Culver's for delivering 7,000 Sundays to our students and staff. I also want to remind everyone to wear purple on Purple Up Day, which is Wednesday, April 19th. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve consent agenda items A through E?
I make that motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, show of hands. Okay, student recognitions, Waynesville Middle School Student Council, Dr. Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Waynesville Middle School Student Council has been awarded the Missouri Association of Student Councils Gold Honor Council Award. This award is established to honor those councils that have a comprehensive program in promoting student activities and student leadership. Activities include school service, spirit, community service, student and teacher recognition, and leadership training activities. The following list consists of our student council officers as well as those who were in attendance at the recent 75th anniversary Missouri Association of Student Councils Convention. When I call your name, you'll come up and get your certificate and then move over here for photos. First, I would like to call up Talon Bennett, who is a co-president. Danica Leet, who is a co-president. Harley Atchison, vice president. Zerlene Batuin, secretary. Faith Borer, historian. Cassandra Hayes. Evelyn Kelly. And Brooklyn Stevens.
Congratulations. Missouri Art Education Association Award, Dr. Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mia Berry, a Waynesville High School sophomore, earned first place overall in the 9th, 10th grade category in the Student Showcase at the Missouri Art Education Association Spring State Conference in Springfield, Missouri. That conference was held in March. Each of the more than 300 art teachers in attendance could bring up to 8 4x6 artworks to showcase their students' work. Mia Berry is a member of the WHS Art Club and National Art Honor Society. Do we have Mia here with us tonight?
Congratulations again, guys. Now we'll move the spotlight on education. Mrs. Vernon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to introduce Mrs. Emily Hawks, who will introduce our classified and certified spotlight on education.
Good evening. Our classified spotlight is Carmen Watterson. Carmen is one of a kind. She has been part of our Freedom family since the beginning. She radiates positivity and brings joy to everyone she encounters. She goes above and beyond to make sure our students and teachers are well taken care of in our lunchroom. Carmen has grown a lot in her leadership abilities and has gone beyond what she thought she could, as she stepped up and has served as our head cook this school year. A staff member shared with us that with Carmen, what you see is what you get. She's small but mighty and leaves big shoes to fill. And our certified spotlight for this evening is Mrs. Natasha Hewlett. Mrs. Hewlett provides a positive outlook on literacy. She encourages educators and students to truly understand the foundations of reading. Mrs. Hewlett has given educators the opportunity to learn more about the science of reading. She does a great job spreading her knowledge throughout Freedom Elementary. Natasha also plans, organizes events at Freedom Elementary. She does a fantastic job involving parents in student learning. Overall, Mrs. Hewlett has a passion for reading and loves to share her knowledge with everyone. A staff member shared with us that Mrs. Hewlett has inspired me to become a better educator, and she shines such a positivity light on Freedom Elementary.
The collaborative team spotlight is awarded to our first grade team, Mrs. Belshi, Mrs. Borgos, Mrs. Brand, Mrs. Chavis, Mrs. Kelly, Mrs. Lloydell, and Ms. Santos. This is a group of dedicated professionals who support the learning and leadership of 166 students. The success of the students within these classes can be seen within the positive classroom environment, the growth of the weekly team meeting reports at PLC, and we are most proud of their cheers when they meet 80% proficiency, which happens often. I would like to highlight a piece of the team's data. On the pre-assessment for the tell and write time, 19% of students were proficient and advanced. And 1 week later, on the post-test, 89% of students were proficient and advanced. Their student focus group began at 7% proficiency and ended the standard at 88% proficient or advanced. The strategy used to teach this standard was manipulatives using Judy clocks. Thank you to this dedicated team of educators for always putting your students first.
Well, congratulations, everybody at Freedom. Transportation Employee of the Month, Mr. Tronstad.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my honor to ask Mr. Aaron Tronstad, Director of Transportation, to come forward and recognize Zachary Wall for Transportation of Employee of the Month for April 2023.
Okay, so like I said, our Employee of the Month for April will be Zachary Wall, also known as Zach. I've known Zach for 14 years now, and I was going to write something up, and I figured if you know somebody that long, you shouldn't have to write it down. So if I mess up, I will. So pretty much Zach's been a mechanic for 16 years for the Waynesville School District. He does a great job. He is a head mechanic now over our shop. He's self-motivated, truly cares about the safety of the students. I think over 16 years, it would not be unheard of or for somebody to kind of lose that passion, and that's not the case with Zach. From the day I started working with him till now, he's the same as he was then as he is now. And one thing I just want to, for those of you out there to get to know who Zach really is, and I might get a little emotional here, but that's just me. My wife was going to Kentucky for a surprise birthday party for her sister and got almost to Kentucky border, and the car broke down. And she called me. It was about 10 o'clock at night. We're 7 hours away. And I'm like, what do I do? So I tried to rent a U-Haul trailer, went on there. They says, your truck's too old, and the car is 3/4 of an inch too wide to fit on any trailers we have. So I'm like, what do I do now? So I was like, well, I know Zach's got a trailer, and you know, as they say, if you have a trailer, you have friends. So I called Zach and I said, you think my truck would be able to pull your trailer? And without a hesitation, he hooked his truck up to that trailer, and we drove all the way to Kentucky that night. No questions asked. So I consider Zach a friend, a coworker, and when you leave here tonight, I hope that you know the type of person that Zach is, and that's the type of person you have working for this school district. He does for others and expects nothing in return. So I would just like to thank Zach. I think he's an amazing worker. He's an amazing asset to our department, and I want to congratulate him for the April Employee of the Month.
Okay, well, congratulations again, Zach. We'll move to discussion items, the 2023-24 Transportation Handbook. Dr. Goforth.
Thank you, Mr. President. The proposed 2023-2024 Transportation Handbook is presented for your review as a first reading. Administration will request approval at the May Board of Education meeting.
Any comments? Goforth. Impact date update, Mr. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight I will provide an update with the status of our impact aid funding to include a brief overview of what impact aid is, the difference between basic impact aid and heavily impacted B2 aid, and our current B2 eligibility status. Impact aid is a revenue source that comes from the federal government and is meant to cover the deficiency in local tax revenues for school districts that have federal property within their district boundaries. This could include low rent housing, Indian lands, and in the case of the Waynesville School District, military installations. As we all know, a large geographic portion of the Waynesville School District is inclusive of the Fort Leonard Wood Army installation. This graphic here in this slide, it represents the latest numbers for the impact aid program. So as you can see, on a yearly basis, the total amount that should be allocated to this program is $2.23 billion. And that is represented by the solid blue bar in the graphic. However, the program hasn't been fully funded for a very long time. And if you look at the, right next to that bar, you can see that the actual allocation is about $1.33 billion, which leaves almost $1 billion of unmet needs. And then if you look right above that, the red dotted box represents that portion of it. And that amount there is the reason why Ms. Bells and I go to Washington, D.C. twice a year and advocate for impact aid to ensure that our legislators keep that on the forefront of their minds and that those funds are there for our students. As you can see, there are approximately 848,000 federally connected students nationwide, and out of those, approximately 315,000 are military, 115,000 Indian lands, 183,000 low-rent housing, and 234,000 civilian students whose parents either live on or work on federal property. I like to show this slide here. I feel like this slide does a great job of kind of showing the need for impact aid. As you can kind of see here, if you look at the local source of revenues across the United States, Missouri on average, and then the Waynesville School District, you can see from a revenue source standpoint, the Waynesville School District receives about 23% of our revenues from local taxes. And then if you look at the United States, on average, it's about 46%. And then across Missouri is about 59%. So without impact aid funding, our district would be grossly underfunded, and we would not be able to provide our students with the level of facilities, quality of education, and a safe learning environment that our students are entitled to. This chart here shows the historical impact, how the impact aid has been historically funded. As you can see, it's steadily increased over the years with total allocations of approximately $1.6 billion in FY23. And I would say one positive thing about the impact aid program is that it has bipartisan support. I mean, both Republicans and Democrats support it. So when we go up on the Hill, it's not usually a matter of whether or not they're going to support it. It's just a matter of kind of keeping that on the forefront of their minds and work towards the full funding, which is crucial to get to the point to where we're getting the funds that should be there. Breaking it down at the Waynesville School District level, there's two different types of support from an impact aid standpoint that the Waynesville School District receives. Basic support, which is about $8 to $10 million annually, and then the B2 heavily impacted aid, which is about $8.5 million annually. And there's thousands of school districts across the nation that receive basic support. However, the Waynesville School District is one of only 22 districts across the entire nation that receive the B2 heavily impacted aid. And this is due to the high level of federal impaction that we have in the Waynesville district. And so the basic support funding, it's a very stable and less volatile source of revenue that we use for our general fund, for operations and day-to-day expenses to pay our staff and to basically keep the lights on. However, due to the volatile nature of the B2 heavily impacted aid, we budget this money on the capital side and use it for new construction and upkeep of our facilities. And we always budget our impact aid revenues very conservatively due to the unknown of how much funding is available each year and how much will be allocated to the impact aid program. With that in mind, we typically receive anywhere between $8 to $10 million annually of basic support funding and approximately $8.5 million of B2 heavily impacted aid. As I mentioned previously, there's only 22 districts in the nation that receive B2 heavily impacted aid. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of hurdles to overcome to get that money. We got to jump through a lot of hoops. And one of these hurdles is that we must maintain a local general fund tax effort of 95% amongst comparable school districts. And so what that means in layman's terms is that the federal government wants to see that our school districts' patrons are kicking in their fair share taxes comparatively to other school districts from a general fund tax levy standpoint. And so basically what that means is that they give us these different methods of grouping ourselves with other school districts, and we have to come within 95% whenever you average out the tax levy of that group to meet that need. So we've had to come to the point of going to what they call special additional factors, which has to be this extra level of approval at the Department of Education. And so it's become extra difficult. One thing here, the Waynesville School District, the tax levy is $2.95, And so across the state of Missouri, the average is $3.52. And so you can kind of see there how the level of difficulty of getting in that 95% threshold there. If you take 95% of the 352 average across the state of Missouri, it's $3.34. So with our levy of $2.95, we come far from meeting that 95% threshold. So we have to jump through all these extra hoops to continue to meet that eligibility. And then, so the provision I was talking about before that allows the special factors, these are factors that directly affect the cost of educating a student, such as children with disabilities, large geographical area to transport students, children with limited English proficiency, and other factors approved by the Department of Education. And so for the current year, which is FY23, we were required to use special factors for the first time to gain B2 eligibility. However, even at this extra level of effort to maintain eligibility, we are running on a razor-thin margin, and it's highly likely we will fall out of eligibility very soon if our tax levy remains at $2.95. So with that in mind, and looking at this slide here, as you can see, for FY23, we are B2 eligible using special factors, and I will also point out the eligibility data we use to calculate is from 3 years prior. For the current school year, FY23, we are required to use data from FY20 to calculate our eligibility. So for any given school year, our tax levy from 3 years ago is used to calculate our eligibility. So this can be good in a way, but it also could be bad in a way. It's good that once we have data for any given year, once they send me the data to start analyzing, I can pull out the crystal ball and predict 3 years ahead of time if we're going to fall out or not. But it's bad in the way that, you know, sometimes the department will pull the rug out from under you on certain things. And so when that happens, you know, at that point, you don't have much time to react. So, for example, if the Impact Aid Department calls us in October, so like October of 2023, which would be the FY24 school year, and they tell us that they audited our application and decided our special factors are not in line with the provision, they would take our B2 eligibility status away, and we would go into a 5-year hold harmless cycle. And I'll get into that in just a little bit here. But at that point, if we decided to run a tax levy issue to attempt to increase our tax levy, so that would go on the April 2024 ballot, and assuming that is voter approved, the increased levy would take effect the following school year in FY25. And as I mentioned, they used data from 3 years prior. So and another caveat to regaining eligibility is you have to be eligible for 2 years coming back into it. So using the example that I just gave you, if a tax levy were passed in FY24, so in April of next year, we would not even be able to use that for eligibility purposes until FY29. So it becomes an issue. You know, if you fall out, then it's very hard to get back in. And so, you know, it becomes important to kind of closely monitor these things and keep a close eye on everything. This chart shows the historical tax levy date going back from FY05 through FY22. So the orange line at the bottom represents the Waynesville School District tax levy, and then the dark gray line in the middle reflects the Missouri average general fund tax levy, and the dark orange line at the top represents the total average Missouri school tax levy, which that includes the general fund, debt service, and the capital outlay. So that's all school tax levies added together shows that line at the top there. So if you look at the time frame from 2008 through 2012, one of the reasons I wanted to point this out is that was following the 2008 recession. And so what happens, you know, in any recession, of course, the state allocations to schools get cut. Public education is one of the first things on the chopping block once the state starts losing funding. So school districts they're forced to react, and the way they make that up is by passing tax levy increases. So you can kind of see that sharp increase from 2008 through 2012. The reason I point that out is because there's talk currently of another recession on the horizon potentially. And so if that were to happen, we would probably be looking at around a 3 to 4 year cycle of something similar there. And so that would put us at even a worse standpoint from an eligibility standpoint when looking at our local tax levy. Kind of to summarize here, so As I mentioned previously, our basic impact aid funding is not in jeopardy. However, we do run the risk in the near future of losing our B2 eligibility. So if I had to answer the question, what would happen if we lost B2 eligibility? Losing B2 eligibility, it's currently the greatest financial threat to our school district. We would go in a 5-year hold harmless cycle, and then the year that we would fall out would become the baseline year. And then the first 2 years after that, we would receive 100% funding, and then it cycles out from there. So the third year would be 90%, fourth year 85%, and then fifth year 80%. And then from year 6 and on, it's an all or none deal. We're just out, and we receive no B2 funding at that point. So the $8.5 million is completely gone. And so, you know, we need that money. There's many things that we do with that money. And so regardless of whether we are B2 eligible or not B2 eligible, our facility needs, they don't go away. The facility needs are still there. And so should we be forced to we'd be forced to pull the money at that point from our operations over to the capital side of the budget, which would take away the funds we have available for covering our day-to-day cost. And if we were to lose B2 eligibility, our future plans to expand preschool opportunities, that becomes a non-possibility at that point. Construction and facility upkeep would be significantly delayed. Future salary increases would be jeopardized. We would have to start looking at which programs potentially could be eliminated to preserve funds. And to keep up with our facility needs at that point, we would have to resort to the more standard method that school districts around us use of passing bond issues to pay for facilities and things of that nature, which that raises our taxes as well. But the difference with those two, with a minor increase to our general fund tax levy to maintain the B2 eligibility, every $1 of additional tax revenue that's paid preserves $14 of B2 funding. And if we were to lose B2 eligibility and have to go to the method of running bond issues, at that point, $1 equals $1. And so, you know, it becomes an issue of a minor tax increase at some point to preserve the $8.5 million of B2 funding, or going into a potential scenario to where we have to go to the voters for a bond issue to be able to satisfy these needs. So I say all that to say that at some point in the near future, decisions got to be made to preserve the $8.5 million. We're going to have to look at increasing the tax levy in the Waynesville School District. So from an impact aid standpoint, that's all I've got. And at this point, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any comments or questions? Thank you, Mr. Harrison.
Thank you.
Salary recommendation, Mrs. Bells.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my pleasure to update the board on the administration's salary recommendation for 2022, 2023. I'm going to give you a lot of information here, and so please take time to digest it. And then also, if you have any questions between now and the next board meeting, I welcome those. So just to kind of give a general overview of the salary process, administration met with certified, classified, and hourly employees to gain insight from individual perspectives through a brainstorming session. And we held 2 meetings with each of those groups. We reviewed market value comparisons for both certified and classified employees. We met with salary teams to again brainstorm and gain perspectives. I guess I did that twice, but it is important because we did want to get input from our staff on these matters and show them where we are. And then we shared the process with our administrative team, and we have been updating the board along the way. Our district goal, just to remind the board, is to be ranked 1 or 2 in all job categories when compared to competing districts. And so just a brief overview of market value comparisons. This is a lot of information, but I will provide a summary later on in the presentation. For certified, we did a comparison with Camdenton, Lebanon, Nixa, Rolla, Springfield, and West Plains. And when we look at those salary comparisons, we pulled out bachelor's, master's, plus doctorate, etc. So this slide represents where we compared in bachelor's, and we were number 1. Next was the masterate doctorate category, and we were ranked number 1 again. We compared where we were with other career ladder or districts that provided career ladder, and as you can see, some districts don't provide that opportunity. Before career ladder was reinstated earlier this year, we provided SOS, but because of grant funding, we were able to up that from $1,500 to $3,000 this year, and then we have the opportunity to even expand that further to $5,000 next year. Salary comparison with our bachelors, we ranked 2 there. And then again, master's plus doctorate, we were ranked number 1. Some of these categories are hard to compare light categories because while we have like master's plus 8 or master's plus 16, other districts don't have those same benchmarks along the way. And so we do the best we can to compile it and compare apples to apples, but that's not always, we're not always able to do that. Then we did market value comparisons with varying jobs across the district through classified and coaching, and then also some certified positions. When looking at the superintendent board secretary, we were ranked number 3. This is a comparison for district and building office support staff, and again, we try to find the most like comparison for that job description in each of the following districts, and you can see there we ranked first in all of those. When looking at head cook salary, we were 4th at the high school level and 2 in all those others. I do want to remind the board that OPA has taken over our food services, but we still do have a few cooks within the district that are still district employees. And then cook salary 1. Custodial maintenance, we were ranked 1 there. Transportation, we did some things with that last year, and we were ranking 2 in those areas. Nurses and aides for LPN, we're ranked number 1. RN, we were ranked 3rd. And then for aide and para salary base, we were ranked number 1. Director of Communications and Marketing, we were ranked number 1. Special Education Process Coordinator 2. Career and Tech Ed, we were ranked 1. And then we get into the coaches stipends. So coaches first year, we were ranked 1, 2, or 3. And you'll see a theme throughout this that middle school coaches is an area that we may want to do some work with at some time. Football coaches year 5. Football coaches year 10. And then football coaches max years. Next, we get into basketball coaches year 1, year 5, and year 10. And then basketball coaches max year. Soccer, golf, and tennis coaches year 1, 5, and then 10. And then soccer, golf, and tennis coaches max years. Next is wrestling, year 1, 5, and 10. And then wrestling max years. Volleyball, coaches year 1, 5, 10, and then volleyball max years. Baseball and softball year 1, year 5, year 10, and max years. Track year 1, 5, year 10, and then track max years. Cross country year 1, year 5, 10, and max years. We're almost done. And then cheer coaches, year 1, 5, 10, and cheer coaches max years. And while we're considering raises and recommendations for salary increases, I think it's important that we just give you a brief overview of the revenue outlook for FY24. ESSER, there we go. ESSER funding, we will receive our last payment for the ESSER funding is the pandemic funding. That is equivalent to $1.5 million. We saw minor increases in state revenue and local revenue, and impact aid was flat this year. So the funding available, the question we get asked by staff is, well, how much do we have to spend towards salary and benefit increases? And so total funds available are $3,029,800. But again, I know you all have asked the question. I think it's important for the community to remember that while we certainly don't want to spend over that, we also need to make sure that we can maintain these raises year after year after year. And so we have to do projections to ensure that we can sustain the raises that we recommend. In addition, employee benefits also covers health insurance. And so this year it looks like we are expecting a 1.9% increase for FY24, and that will constitute a $91,200 increase. Currently, our health insurance cost is $4,800,000, or $4,800,000. So just to summarize our salary meetings, overall, for the market value comparison for class supply employees, we ranked in the top 1 or 2 in almost every category. RN pay was identified as an area of concern for our certified employees that attended that meeting, and the committee recommended adding more to the stipend for RNs. For our certified meeting salary, overall, our certified market value comparisons for certified employees ranked in the top 1 or 2 in almost every category. The committee appeared favorable to separating the administrators off of the certified salary schedule and to normalizing the salary schedule, which were both concepts that we had sought input on from our staff. The committee wanted to continue to have SOS and Career Ladder as options for employees, and the committee wanted the district to move from the 3,000 to the 5,000. And they also were very aware of the fact that that funding could go away at some point. And so they certainly were interested in continuing to maintain some sort of SOS program. So if that should happen, we would be prepared for that. Other items that we were discussed and that were identified through market value comparisons for this school year were to look at special education process coordinators, board secretary, and then also committees suggested that we honor years of work that were not awarded to staff when they were hired under the old handbook requirements. And for those of you that have been around a while, back several years ago, staff were only able to bring in 8 years of experience. And we voted as a board to allow staff to bring in all years as a recruitment tool as teacher shortages started to become more evident. However, we do have some staff that were brought in under the old requirement, and so their suggestion was to go back and look at those staff members and honor all years of experience and give them those and move them along on the salary schedule. And so those are areas that we definitely did address in our recommendation. We do acknowledge that there's some work to be done with middle school coaches, and we are looking to adjust our coaching salary schedule for FY23-24. That's a heavy lift because when you start tweaking middle school coaching salaries, you don't want them making more than your head coaches. And so it's a ripple effect, and that takes a great deal of time and really feels like something we need to develop a committee around and work through that. And so that's certainly our goal for next school year, but not something that we felt we would be able to accomplish this school year. An additional to-do that the teachers and staff gave us was to explore with secondary administrators duty length instead of amount. So now you might be assigned that you have to do 3 duties as part of your contract. Well, what their perspective is that some duties are an hour or 2 hours, and that counts as their 1, while others may spend 8 hours at a duty, and that counts as 1. And so they were asking that we look at duties in terms of hours and length, and not necessarily one duty is one duty. And so that is something that Dr. Adkins and I will be visiting with our secondary principals about at an upcoming secondary administrators meeting. And then just to, I feel like this is important to cover because when we talk about normalizing, I know we've talked a lot about it in study session, but we certainly haven't talked a lot about it publicly. And so I just think it's probably a good idea or time to kind of just review how our salary schedule works and why we are looking at normalizing our salary schedule. So just to refresh the board, there's multipliers that go across the top based on years of, or based on your education. So for instance, master's plus 24 has a different multiplier than bachelor's plus 16. So there's a multiplier at the top, and then there's also multipliers as you move down. So every step, there is a percentage in that step, and then the base figure, which is that first spot in the BA, that figure generates the entire salary schedule. And so this just demonstrates our current column multipliers for the educational attainment piece, and then this is our current multipliers by step. And so I'm going to just kind of zoom in here. And so as you can see, these are a few of our examples of multipliers by step, and you can see how inconsistent it is. So one time you might get a 1.45%, and another time you might get a 1.77%. It just depends on where you're at on the salary schedule and what step you're moving to. And the question I get asked all the time is, why are they inconsistent and so convoluted? And the truth is, we don't know for sure. However, at the inception, we would anticipate that the steps were consistent. But over the years, they've become convoluted, and we don't have a good, clear answer as to why. It could have been an attempt to slow the increase or spur increases. It could be to prevent inflated raises on the administrative salary schedule. And it could have been an attempt to move ahead of competitors in certain areas. All of those are possibilities, but it would be near impossible to speak to why it got so dysregulated. I also want just to point out to the board that when we add a percent to the base, that goes through to higher percentages for all employees, because that, remember, there's a percentage that goes this way and down. So when you change that base sum, that changes the whole salary schedule. And so when you say, oh, we're approving a 1% raise, it's actually more than a 1% raise, which I'll try to explain further here in a moment. And then in addition, last year and the year before, we were way out of whack with our competitors in the master's column. So we did surgically try to improve that area. And so there are certain levers that we can pull to look at salary increases for staff. We can do in addition to the base, we could look at the column multiplier or the step multiplier. So the column multiplier are the multipliers at the top, and then the step multipliers are the ones going down each step. So that leads us to our salary recommendation for this year, and it's a really hefty one. The teams did a lot of good work, and there's more that we're able to do this year because we are receiving that $1.5 million with ESSER funding, and we haven't had to spend it on things like hand sanitizer and cleaning devices and air filters and all of those types of things. And so we are really using that to address salary. So our recommendation will be to normalize the certified salary schedule, give a step to all employees. We are proposing a 0.5% increase to the certified salary schedule base, a 1% increase to the classified salary schedule, add an additional $100 to the RN stipend. For special education process coordinators, add 3 days to their contract and an additional $1,000 stipend. Continue with SOS and career ladder and budget for eligible staff to be able to receive up to $5,000. Add an additional workday for paraprofessionals. Honor years of work not awarded to staff when hired under the old handbook. And then add an additional step for career and tech ed moving toward completion of their IRC so that they just wouldn't be frozen on that bachelor's column, that they would move over as they work to credential their IRC and get to that CEC category. So the bottom line is, and what teachers will ask us is, what does that mean for my paycheck? And so we tried to put this in the clearest way possible. And we have to deal in averages because, again, the percentages are inconsistent. So just normalizing the salary schedule. People will receive a minimum increase of 0.2% or a maximum increase of 7.6%. But overall, if the board were to approve what administration is recommending for a certified salary, there'd be a 4.5% average increase for our teaching staff, which is quite a bit more than what we've been able to do the past few years, and something that we certainly are proud of. If we were to give the step to all employees, well, if we were to give the percent for classified employees, that would be a 2% average increase to our classified staff. And just to remind the board, we are ranked #1 in nearly all areas by a significant amount. So we feel like that's a really a nice increase for them. And then we would move the administrators off of the certified teaching salary schedule, which many districts have gone to do, because it's really hard to, doing a percentage increase for administrators looks different than doing a percentage increase for teachers. And so we want to move them off of there and compete with like positions as far as administration goes. We don't want to pay people astronomical amounts of money. We want to be competitive. And so it's also very hard to recruit with our current salary schedule because nobody can figure out how to calculate what they would be making as an administrator. And so it would also help with recruitment purposes. So just normalizing would give you that minimum and maximum increase. And then the step, again, would be another percentage. And then if we did anything to the base, that would be another percentage. And that's how we ended up with the total impact on the paycheck in the Post-it note. And again, you know, I do want to remind the board that these are averages because it will be a little bit different for each individual employee. So the cost of the proposed salary recommendations that administration is recommending will be $2,751,300. And again, this is something that we think we'll be able to sustain over from here on out. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
One question as far as sustainability. For this year, it looks like, as you had mentioned, 1.5 million would come from the ESSER funding. And as far as being able to continue this in the future, where would those potential revenue sources be?
So once we have it normalized, it's normalized, and we'll be able to better predict salary increases and movement on the salary schedule. So we're essentially taking that $1.5 million and using that to normalize. Because really, like Mr. Harris and I discussed, it's kind of now or never, and it's something that we've entertained for years. But moving forward for recruitment purposes and then just being able to have more solid projections, we feel like now is the right time to do that. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Mr. Harrison?
Any other comments? Thank you, Mrs. Bills. 22-23 Winter Sports Report, Mr. Ace.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, we'll go over our usuals today. Again, we'll cover our academics for winter sports. That's all of our winter sports teams, competitive success, communication, community involvement, and then, of course, our upcoming events. So if you take a look, these are our GPAs for, in the left-hand column, all student athletes. So any student athlete that came out for the first day of practice, whether they made it the whole season or not, the average there would be for all of our sports was 3.29 GPA. And then we compare that to our varsity level. Anyone who received the varsity letter in those specific sports, that average was 3.48. That's actually really, really good. Probably the highest that we've had in winter sports in the last 10 years. We continue to see our GPAs increase over time. We're just getting a lot more intentional with what we're doing with our WIN program after school and some of the stuff that we're doing to get kids time in the classroom and get the supports that they need. These are the Winter Academic All-Conference Awards. So you can see that we had 56 student athletes in the winter that received a 3.75 or higher GPA. And then we had 37 student athletes that were between a 3.5 and 3.74 GPA. This is a breakdown by sport, showing 93 total student athletes on that. And if you want to compare that to actual number of student athletes that we had during the winter season, we had about 276. Our competitive success, we receive all conference honors, all district, all state honors. We had 21 student athletes that were honored through all conference. That's the Ozark Conference. 7 that were honored in our all district, and then we had 1 young lady who was all state this year. I think our battery might be going dead. We also have a number, I think it's 23 total students that are headed to band state. That's Central District Band. If they receive that exemplary rating, then they would basically qualify for the state tournament. Our one individual was Brianna Hurd, who was all-state for girls basketball. She also received 6 or 7, if you've been paying attention on any social media, 6 or 7 other awards that she's received throughout the year, so tremendous. These were our 6 individuals who qualified for the state wrestling tournament. We had 4 young ladies that qualified, Haley Fort, Mackenzie Moffitt, Giselle Perez, and Isabel Lamond, and then we had 2 young men, Joshua Best and Jacob Forshee, who represented the Tigers at the state wrestling tournament. We also had 3 individuals signed during the winter season, none of which are actually winter sports, but Joanna Jones signed at Weber International University in Florida to play softball. Fahim signed for soccer to go to Illinois Wesleyan, and then DJ Horry is going to Viola to play football. Just as a reminder, our 3 kind of main areas to communicate with the athletic department and athletics and our activities. Canvas, Twitter, anything that is a game, a score, a cancellation will go out on Twitter. And then, of course, our coaches use Canvas classrooms and a Remind system. In addition to that, I will give a monthly AD update. One will actually be coming out here next week, so look for that as we're in the heart of the middle of the season and we'll be heading off to districts tournaments. Community involvement, this is something that I'm really excited about. We're starting to get out and about again with COVID being over. We've had several of our teams go on and represent and/or provide services to outside organizations. Snack in the Pack, our girls soccer team, this winter actually went prior to the season, and they spent about 3.5 hours packing for Snack in the Pack. In addition to that, we had our swim team, boys and girls, that helped out at the Red, White, and Blue Club, which was a powerlifting tournament, so they went and they helped facilitate that. Currently, we have Wood Little League has over 350 boys and girls that are participating. It's just been great seeing kids get back out and about and that participation increasing. And if you've been at Price Cutter, you can see that now Price Cutter has a store where you can buy Waynesville apparel. So make sure you get over there and you check that out. Upcoming events, we have a lot coming up here in the next few weeks. It's a busy time of the year, but this Friday we'll have our Waynesville Invitational for both tennis and track. In addition to that, we have Tiger Festival of Nations. Mrs. Bales already addressed that earlier today. And then May 9th, we are hosting the middle school track championships. That will be an all-day event. There will be over 20 schools exactly, 20 middle schools that will be here for that event, so that'll be extremely exciting. And then May 13th, we're honored to be able to host this year a double district, Class 3 and Class 5 districts for Misha. And that is it. Any questions?
Comments or questions? And thank you, Mr. Reyes.
Thank you.
AVID facilitator position, Dr. Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Attached for your review is the AVID facilitator position. This will be brought for approval at our regular May Board of Education meeting. If you have any questions, please contact me.
Thank you. And Board Policy KC, Mrs. Bells.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Community Engagement Plan is attached for the board's review and consideration, which has been run through the TABS Committee. Any comments or suggestions will be accepted between now and the May meeting, when it will be resubmitted for board action.
We'll move to action items. District Assessment Plan, Dr. Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. The district assessment plan is reviewed, updated, and presented for approval annually. The assessment plan outlines assessments that will be utilized by the district, use and dissemination of results, as well as test security procedures. Administration requests a motion to approve the district assessment plan as presented.
Do I have any comments or questions? Do I have a motion?
I would make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, show of hands. Motion carries. April 2023 district surplus, Mr. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Administration seeks a motion to approve the attached items on the list there as excess items ready for surplus.
Any comments or questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, show of hands. Closed session, closed record, closed vote is allowed by RSMO 610.021, Section 6, scholastic probation, expulsion, or graduation of identifiable individuals. Motion to enter into closed session.
Mr. President, I make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please. Rick?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We're in closed.